You remember it. That specific feeling of sitting down on a Tuesday night, adjusting the antenna, and being transported to parallel universes, deep-sea colonies, or dark government conspiracies. Some of these shows became legends, like The X-Files or Star Trek. TNG. But for every giant, there were dozens of incredible, ambitious shows that were canceled too soon, buried by bad time slots, or simply lost in the archives of history. These are the shows we talked about on the playground or at the water cooler, only to have them vanish after 1 or 2 seasons. Today, we're dusting off the VHS tapes. We're going back to the decade of grunge and grit to look at 10 incredible lost 90s sci-fi shows that deserve a second chance. Let's see how many of these you actually remember. Weird Science, 1994 to 1997. We're starting with something a bit lighter to warm up. Most of you remember the John Hughes movie. But for a generation of teenage boys in the mid-90s, the Weird Science TV series was essential viewing. The premise remained the same. 2 high school outcasts use a computer to create the perfect woman, Lisa, who has magic-like digital powers. But while the movie was a one-off adventure, the show leaned hard into the sci-fi what-if scenarios. It was essentially the Twilight Zone, but with more jokes in 90s fashion. It lasted 88 episodes, yet it's rarely mentioned today. It was self-aware, funny, and surprisingly creative with its sci-fi tropes. If you wanted a break from the dark, brooding conspiracies of the 90s, Lisa and the boys were there to provide a Technicolor escape. Time Tracks, 1993 to 1994. Next up, we go to the year 2193, or at least, the version of it we saw in Time Tracks. The show follows Darian Lambert, a detective from the future, who travels back to 1993 to hunt down fugitive criminals who have escaped into the past. Armed only with a miniature computer named Selma hidden in a credit card and a weapon that could stun or transport criminals back to the future, it was the ultimate police procedural with a sci-fi heart. It had that classic 90s action hero vibe. It wasn't trying to change the world, it was just trying to be a damn good show. For many of us, Darian Lambert was the epitome of cool. It's a tragedy this show doesn't have a modern reboot, because the concept of a man out of time chasing future tech in our world is a story that never gets old. The Sentinel, 1996 to 1999. In 1996, we got a show that blended urban grit with ancient mysticism. The Sentinel. Jim Ellison is an army ranger who survives a crash in the Peruvian jungle. When he returns to the US, he realizes his 5 senses have been heightened to a superhuman level. He can see for miles, hear a whisper through a concrete wall, and track a scent like a wolf. What made the Sentinel great wasn't just the superpower aspect. It was the partnership between Jim and his guide, Blair Sandberg, an anthropology student who helped him control his abilities. It was a smart, character-driven show that explored what it really means to be human in a sensory-overloaded world. It ran for 4 seasons, but in the shadow of the X-Files, it never quite got the legendary status it deserved. It's high time we changed that. 7 Days, 1998 to 2001. By the late 90s, the Cold War was over, but we were still terrified of the end of the world. 7 Days gave us the ultimate undo button. The premise? The US government had recovered alien technology from Roswell to build a time machine that could send one man back exactly 7 days. The hero was Frank Parker, a guy who was basically mentally unstable enough to handle the soul-crushing pressure of time travel. Every episode followed the same high-stakes loop. A national disaster happens, the world ends, and Frank has to backstep to 168 hours earlier to stop it. It was tense, it was action-packed, and it had that gritty, industrial 90s look. For 3 seasons, we watched Frank take a beating for humanity. It's one of those shows that feels even more relevant today in our age of constant global crises. It was the original Edge of Tomorrow, and it deserved more than to be forgotten in the UPN archives. Dark Skies, 1996 to 1997. If you ever felt like the X-Files didn't go far enough into the conspiracy, Dark Skies was for you. This show was ambitious. It took the entire history of the 20th century and rewrote it as a secret war between humans and a parasitic alien race called the Hive. The tagline was, "History as we know it is a lie." JFK wasn't killed for political reasons. He was killed because he knew too much about the invasion, the Cuban Missile Crisis, an alien power play. It was stylish, paranoid, and intellectual. It felt like a period piece sci-fi, which was rare for the time. Unfortunately, it only lasted one season, but it left behind a cult legacy that fans still debate on forums today. It's the perfect binge watch for anyone who likes their sci-fi, served with a side of historical dread. Nowhere Man, 1995 to 1996. Imagine going to dinner with your wife, stepping out for a cigarette, and coming back to find she doesn't recognize you. Not only that, your credit cards don't work, your mother doesn't know you exist, and your entire identity has been wiped clean. That was the nightmare of Nowhere Man. Thomas Vale, a photojournalist, takes a picture of a secret execution, and a shadow organization decides to unmake his life to get the negatives back. This wasn't just a sci-fi show, it was a psychological thriller that felt like The Prisoner for the 90s. It asked a terrifying question. Who are you if no one knows your name? It was sophisticated, cinematic, and ended on one of the most mind-blowing cliffhangers in TV history. If you haven't seen this one, find it. It will make you want to burn your ID and go off the grid. SeaQuest DSV, 1993 to 1996. Produced by Steven Spielberg and starring the legendary Roy Scheider from Jaws, SeaQuest DSV was pitched as Star Trek Underwater. In the 90s, we were obsessed with the ocean, the final frontier on our own planet. The show featured a talking dolphin named Darwin, a teenage genius, and a high-tech submarine trying to keep the peace between undersea colonies. It was optimistic, high budget, and educational, at least in the first season. But then things got weird. It shifted toward aliens, giant monsters, and time travel. While it lost its way toward the end, that first season remains a masterpiece of 90s blue sky sci-fi. It had a heart, and it had Roy Scheider's gravitas. It's a show that dreamed big, and even when it failed, it did so with style.
What if you could find
Sliders, 1995 to 2000. Before the multiverse was a billion-dollar Marvel trope, there was Sliders. Quinn Mallory, a college student, invents a device in his basement that opens a portal to parallel Earths. One world, the Nazis won. In another, the British never lost the Revolutionary War. In another, San Francisco is a giant prison. The stakes were simple. They were sliding from world to world, trying to find the home world before the timer ran out. The chemistry between the four leads, especially John Rhys-Davies as the grumpy Professor Arturo, was gold. For the first two seasons, it was the best sci-fi on television. It was clever, funny, and made you wonder every morning, is the traffic light still green for go? Or is it red today? It was a show about infinite possibilities that unfortunately ran out of time. Millennium, 1996 to 1999. When Chris Carter created The X-Files, he became a god of 90s TV, but his follow-up, Millennium, was arguably the deeper, darker show. It starred Lance Henriksen as Frank Black, an ex-FBI profiler who could see into the minds of killers. As the year 2000 approached, the show focused on the Millennium Group, a secret society convinced that the turn of the century would bring about a biblical apocalypse. This wasn't Monster of the Week fun. This was bleak, heavy, and deeply philosophical. Lance Henriksen gave the performance of a lifetime as a man trying to protect his family from an encroaching darkness he could never truly escape. It's a crime that this show is so hard to find on streaming today, because its atmosphere of dread is still unmatched. Space, Above and Beyond, 1995 to 1996. At number 1, we have the show that was Battlestar Galactica 10 years before Battlestar Galactica existed. Space, Above and Beyond. This wasn't a show about exploring new worlds or making friends with aliens. This was a show about war. In 2063, humanity is attacked by an unknown race called the Chigs. We follow a squad of rookie space marines, the wildcards, as they go from the flight deck to the foxholes. It was gritty. It was dirty. It showed the toll that combat takes on the soul. It didn't have a hero of the week vibe. It had a band of brothers vibe. The dogfights were incredible. The writing was mature, and it took risks that no other show in 1995 would touch. It was canceled after one season on a cliffhanger that still haunts fans to this day. Space, Above and Beyond didn't just deserve a second chance. It deserved to be the biggest show in the world. It is the ultimate lost treasure of 90s sci-fi. The 90s were a time when we weren't afraid to be weird, dark, or overly ambitious on a TV budget. These shows were the pioneers. They paved the way for the high-concept storytelling we take for granted today. But there's something about the original versions, the practical sets, the early CGI, the specific 90s vibe that can never be replaced. How many of these did you have a poster of on your wall? Did I miss the one show you've been trying to remember for 20 years? Drop a comment below, and let's keep the nostalgia alive. And if you want more deep dives into the history of the screen, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and join the squad.